When the promise lingers and heaven feels slow, you wonder if God has forgotten your name. Pause. You stand in the long shadow of a prayer you've prayed 1,000 times, a door you expected to open, a healing you were sure would come, a breakthrough that remains just beyond the horizon. You hold the fragile seed of a promise, but the soil of your life seems too barren, the season too long. You are waiting. You see others receive. You watch their breakthroughs bloom, their blessings unfold in bright daylight, and you look at your own path, a winding road covered in the fine dust of delay. And the question whispers in the silent hours, why me? Why the wait? You think of the years that have passed since you first heard his voice, since you were first given the vision, and the weight of that time presses down. It feels like a punishment, or perhaps a sign that you misheard him entirely. The delay is not a test of your strength, it is a profound invitation to test your faith in his character. You are not the first. Look back across the millennia to a man who understood the desert of delay better than anyone. Abraham. He was called to leave everything familiar, a man of 75 years, asked to trade comfort for a tent, certainty for a star map. He was given a promise so vast to be the father of countless nations that it seemed like a magnificent mockery of his own aging body. He received the word of God, but then silence, years of it, decades of it. He walked, he pitched tents, he built altars, all the while waiting for the sound of a baby's cry that would not come. His journey is a mirror for yours. His confusion, his momentary lapses, his ultimate triumph, they are not just history. They are a blueprint for how to navigate the wilderness of the unfulfilled promise. The delay is not a denial. The pause is not a stop. It is a divine mechanism designed to build a foundation that can hold the magnitude of the blessing he intends to give you. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared. From Abraham's story flow 18 lessons for every soul who still waits for God's promise to unfold. Take them as oil for your lamp, for the night is passing and the dawn of your destiny is drawing near. When God calls you to leave without a map, the pain is the blind leap. You've been told to move, to leave the comfort of Ur or Haran, but the destination is veiled. Your soul cries out for a detailed itinerary, a 5-year plan, a guaranteed outcome. You are walking into the unknown, and the ground feels unstable. Abraham's moment. By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out, not knowing whither he went. Hebrews 11:8. He packed up his life, his flocks, his kin, and began a journey based only on a voice. He left the visible for the invisible. Spiritual insight. God often hides the map to force you to rely on the map maker. The process of stepping out in ignorance cultivates a radical dependence on him, which is the very ground faith stands on. Your life is not a GPS route, it is a treasure hunt. And the next clue is only revealed when you take the step of faith. Hope. Don't fear the blank space ahead. Obedience becomes your compass. The destination is secure because the hand guiding you is sovereign. 2. Obedience opens what comfort blocks. The struggle here is the gravitational pull of the familiar. The old, comfortable way, the easy choice, the settled life, is always competing with the uncomfortable, difficult path of divine instruction. You know what God wants you to do, but it feels like the cost is too high, the sacrifice too great. Abraham's moment. Leaving Haran. It was more than a city. It was the last tether to his past, a place he could have easily settled into. God didn't call him to relocate. He called him to sever a tie. Spiritual insight. Comfort is the greatest enemy of the covenant. God cannot build a legacy in a heart too afraid to be inconveniently positioned. True obedience is rarely convenient. It is the radical act of choosing the higher call, even when it costs you peace in the short term. The gate to your promise is guarded by a single toll, your complete surrender. Hope. What seems like a closed door of hardship is actually a wide-open vista of opportunity. The greatest blessings are always found beyond the walls of your own making. 3. God's promises. Mature in slow seasons. You are afflicted by the tyranny of the immediate. You want the fruit now. You want the promise realized in the same time frame you use for ordering goods online. The slowness feels like inefficiency, like God is running behind schedule. You feel the pressure of time, the ticking clock of your own life. Abraham's moment. 25 years passed between the first promise of a son, Genesis 12, and the birth of Isaac, Genesis 21. Think of the endless sunrises and sunsets, the years spent pitching and unpitching the tent. He had nothing but the unchanging stars and the unchanging word. Spiritual insight. God operates in seasons, not schedules. He uses the slow season to deepen the roots of your faith so that the tree of your blessing can withstand any storm. A rushed miracle is often a shallow one. The delay ensures that when the blessing finally arrives, you have the character, the wisdom, and the reverence to handle it well. Hope. You may not see the promise yet, but heaven is building it in silence. The harvest is coming. The soil is simply being made ready. Waiting builds what winning cannot. The core struggle of waiting is the feeling of inactivity. You feel stalled, sidelined, unproductive. You want to be doing something significant, but all you are called to do is to be patient, to be still, to be faithful in the mundane. Abraham's moment, the years in Canaan before Isaac, simply living the life of a nomad, tending flocks and waiting. There was no great battle, no miracle of the Red Sea, just daily, quiet faithfulness. Spiritual insight. Winning can breed pride. Waiting breeds character. Waiting teaches you to distinguish between God's activity and your performance. The delay is purifying your motives, humbling your spirit, and building a reservoir of patience that will be more valuable to you than the blessing itself. Hope. Your season of stillness is not wasted time, it is soul-shaping time. The internal victory is more important than the external one. Faith begins where control ends. You wrestle with the impulse to manage the promise. You feel the need to step in, to help God out, to control the variables that feel too chaotic. You analyze, strategize, and manipulate circumstances, desperate to bring the promise to heel. Abraham's moment. His decision to go down to Egypt during a famine and tell Pharaoh that Sarah was his sister, not his wife. Genesis 12:10-20. He took control, acting out of fear, and nearly cost him the very foundation of the promise. Spiritual insight. Whenever you assume control, you silently declare that God is insufficient. Faith is the absolute surrender of the steering wheel. It's admitting, I have no power over this outcome and I don't need to. He does. The delay forces your hand out of the work. Hope. Let go. True power is found in complete relinquishment. God cannot bless what you insist on holding on to. 6. Delay is not denial. It's development. The most painful lie the enemy whispers is that the delay means the promise is cancelled. You interpret the closed door as a definitive no, when God intends it to be a deliberate not yet. You confuse God's pacing with God's rejection. Abraham's moment. Every year that passed without a son must have felt like a growing mountain of evidence that the promise was impossible. Yet, God never rescinded the word. He simply allowed the clock to keep turning. Spiritual insight. The silence is active. It is in the delay that God is developing the spiritual muscles required to sustain the answered prayer. He is using the resistance to build your resilience. The promise is being polished, and so are you. Hope. Hold fast to the original word. What is delayed is being prepared, not denied. The fullness of time is an active, not passive period. God changes your name before He changes your circumstance. The challenge is the gap between your identity and your reality. You have a divine calling, but your current situation doesn't reflect it. You feel like an imposter, a failure, because your circumstance hasn't caught up with your status. Abraham's moment. God changed Abram's name, exalted father, to Abraham, father of a multitude, when he was still childless. Genesis 17:5. The name change was not based on current facts, but on future faith. Spiritual insight. God establishes your identity in the covenant first, before He proves it in your context. He calls you what you will be, not what you currently are. The delay is designed to make you grow into the authority of your new name. You must see yourself through His eyes, not through the lens of your problems. Hope. Before the breakthrough comes, walk in your new identity. You are not a waiter. You are a recipient in waiting. 8. The stars teach you to count promises, not problems. You are consumed by a counting game of scarcity. You count your lacks, your limitations, your years of failure, the money you don't have, the connections you missed. Your focus is grounded in the dust of your current reality, Abraham's moment. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. Genesis 15:5. God pulled his gaze from the floor of his tent to the immensity of the cosmos. Spiritual insight. Your perspective determines your patience. When you focus on your limitations, your faith shrinks. When you look at God's limitlessness, your expectation expands. The delay is an invitation to reorient your vision, to see the vastness of the promise against the smallness of the problem. Hope. Lift your eyes. Do not count your scars. Count your stars. The magnitude of your future is beyond your ability to calculate. Every detour still leads to destiny. You feel the pain of the wasted step. You look back at the wrong turns, the mistakes, the time you feel you lost, and you believe you've wandered off the divine path completely. You think the detour has invalidated the destiny. Abraham's moment. The detour to Egypt was a mistake, an act of fear. Yet God's promise was not annulled. He was brought back to the land, and the covenant was reaffirmed. Spiritual insight. The most comforting truth of faith is that God's destination is more powerful than your detours. His love is a net, not a thread. It catches you even when you stumble. He can redeem every wrong turn, every foolish choice, and weave it into the greater tapestry of your story. Nothing in your past is beyond His redemptive touch. Hope. Don't despair over the path you took. God is the ultimate navigator. Your journey, even the unexpected parts, is still calibrated for His purpose. So, fear creates Ishmaels. Faith waits for Isaac. This is the lesson of the impatient substitute. Tired of waiting, exhausted by the silence, you are tempted to create a temporary, man-made answer. You feel pressure to produce a result even if it's outside of God's prescribed method. Abraham's moment. Taking Hagar to conceive Ishmael. Genesis 16. It was a sensible, culturally accepted solution to the problem of barrenness, but it was an act of human effort taking precedence over divine promise. Ishmael was a good son, but he was not the covenant son. Spiritual insight. Ishmael is the fruit of human striving. Isaac is the miracle of divine timing. The delay will always tempt you to settle for something good now, rather than waiting for something God ordained. Be careful not to birth a distraction while waiting for the true deliverance. Hope resists the urge to settle. Wait for the promise that is sealed with his laughter. Wait for the miracle that only he can produce. When the promise feels impossible, laugh like Sarah. The struggle is the giggle of disbelief. When the promise is delayed long enough, your faith can turn into cynical doubt. You know the word, but your reality screams an impossible contradiction, and the only logical response left is to laugh at the absurdity. Abraham's moment. When the angel announced that Sarah, at 90, would conceive, she laughed in the tent, Genesis 18:12. Her laughter was the final honest acknowledgement of the sheer impossibility of the situation. Spiritual insight. The impossible is God's favorite canvas. God does not require you to deny the absurdity. He asks you to move past it and place your hope in the one who defines reality. The greatest faith is not believing something is easy, but believing something is possible because God said it. Hope. Let the impossible become your source of wonder, not your source of doubt. Your blessing will be so unmistakably divine that you will laugh too, not in disbelief, but in astonished joy. Oh, faith must be tested to be trusted. The tension is the refiner's fire. The delay exposes the weak points in your faith, the areas where you still rely on your own strength, your own logic, or your own timing. The test is painful, but it is necessary for growth. Abraham's moment, the continual famine, the threats from kings, the necessity of rebuilding altars and rehearing the promise. Every challenge refined his trust and peeled back the layers of his self-reliance. Spiritual insight. God tests your faith not to find a flaw, but to build a fortress. A faith that has never been challenged cannot be truly depended upon. The moment of delay is preparing your faith for the moment of fulfillment, ensuring that the vessel is strong enough for the treasure. Hope. Do not run from the trial of your faith. It is more precious than gold, and it is the forge where your ultimate deliverance is being shaped. Surrender is the highest form of worship. You feel the constant tug of ownership. The blessing is yours, and you guard it jealously. You feel that once you receive the promise, it must be held tightly, protected, and controlled. Abraham's moment, the birth of Isaac, was the ultimate fulfillment. He held the promise in his arms, but the lesson wasn't over. The true lesson was surrender. Spiritual insight. The delay culminates in the test of release. God gives you the blessing not to satisfy your ego, but to prove your heart's devotion. He wants to know, do you love the gift more than the giver? True worship is holding the promise with an open hand, ready to give it back if he asks. Hope. Give God back the promise even before you receive it. Your willingness to surrender is the final key that unlocks the door to ultimate security. The mountain of sacrifice hides the ram of provision. The ultimate fear is the cost of the blessing. You wonder if God will truly ask for the one thing you cannot bear to lose, the very thing he gave you after all the waiting. The mountain is a place of terror, not triumph. Abraham's moment. God commanded him to take his only son, Isaac, to Mount Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice. Genesis 22. The delayed promise was now the threatened sacrifice. The journey up the mountain was the culmination of 25 years of faith. Spiritual insight. The ultimate proof of your faith is not your ability to receive a promise, but your willingness to release it. The final destination of your delay is always a place of sacrifice, and it is at the point of complete surrender, when the knife is lifted, that God reveals the provision he has hidden all along. Hope, the God who asks you to lay the blessing down, has already prepared the answer for you. On your Mount Moriah, Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide, will reveal himself. God's timing protects what his promise prepared. The worry here is the insecurity of the future. You feel that if you only had the blessing now, you could protect it. You don't realize that your current immaturity or your current circumstances could actually jeopardize the very thing you are praying for. Abraham's moment. If Isaac had been born when Abram was 60, the spiritual immaturity of the family might have meant he was raised in Haran or spoiled by too much comfort. The delay ensured that Isaac was born to a man and woman whose entire life had been refined by the fire of waiting. Spiritual insight. The delay is a layer of spiritual armor for the blessing itself. God holds the promise in His hand until the moment you are fully ready to steward it, not just to receive it, but to protect it, raise it, and pass it on. His timing is your protection, hope, trust the guardrails of the Almighty. What He is withholding is being kept safe for the perfect moment of its debut. Sometimes you must let go to receive. The internal conflict is the clutching hand. You hold on to old methods, old assumptions, and old fears. You cannot conceive of the new blessing because your hands are still full of the debris of the past. Abraham's moment, the separation from Lot, Genesis 13. Lot, who was a kind of substitute comfort, a familiar family tie, had to be released so that God could reaffirm the land promise, an infinitely greater blessing. Spiritual insight. Space must be created for the new covenant. You cannot receive the new wine while you are still desperately clinging to the old wineskins. The delay often requires you to release a relationship, a way of thinking, or a lesser opportunity to make room for the greater promise that is coming. Hope. Release the familiar to embrace the fantastic. What you let go of today is clearing the path for the immense blessing of tomorrow. 7. Faith leaves a legacy beyond your lifetime. The discouragement is the limitation of mortality. You feel the clock winding down, and you fear that you will not live to see the complete, total fulfillment of the promise you were given. You want to finish the story. Abraham's moment. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them. Hebrews 11:13. Abraham died having received a single son, and owned only a burial plot. The full nation was still hundreds of years away. Spiritual insight. God's promises are generational. Your role is not always to see the completion, but to be the faithful founder. Your obedience in the delay creates the foundation, the covenant ground, that your children and their children will stand upon to claim the ultimate fulfillment. Your life is a chapter, not the entire book. Hope. Your faith is a heritage. Be faithful in your time and trust that the God who started the work will finish it, even if the final fruit is harvested by those who follow you. 18. Delay ends. When your heart finally trusts His heart, the final deepest struggle, the agonizing residue of the long wait, is the insidious doubt of God's goodness. You look at the vacant space in your life where the blessing should be, and you wonder, is God holding out on me? You question if He is cruel, or perhaps simply indifferent to the acute daily pain of your longing. You feel the weight of His silence and fear it confirms a flaw in His love. This is the ultimate crucible. The truth is, the true end of the delay is not about the calendar. It's about the condition of your heart. It is about the complete unreserved surrender of your timeline and your understanding to His infinite wisdom. Consider Abraham's journey to Mount Moriah. It was the culmination of every lonely step, every answered prayer, and every mistake. He didn't just receive Isaac. He carried the promise on his back, up the dusty path, with the fire and the knife in his hand. He had waited 25 years for this boy, the laughter of God made flesh, and now God asked for him back. This was not a test of obedience. It was a surgical examination of his soul. God knew Abraham would obey. The question was, where had Abraham placed his ultimate affection? Had the gift become the idol? Abraham's moment, when his hand was stayed, the angel spoke the defining words, "Now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me." Genesis 22:12. Pause. The very moment he proved his heart trusted the giver more than the gift, the purpose of the long delay was fulfilled. The season of uncertainty vanished. The covenant was sealed forever, not on the basis of time served, but on the foundation of trust proven. This is the profound spiritual insight for you. The delay's purpose is to move your trust from God's hand, the gift, to God's heart, the giver. While you were waiting, you were focused on the thing, the job, the spouse, the healing, the breakthrough. But God was focused on the relationship. He wanted you to reach a place where, even if the promise never arrived, you would still stand firm and say, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." Job 13:15, paraphrased. Once your soul is fully at rest, once you are certain of his love and the infallibility of his perfect timing, the ultimate barrier to the blessing dissolves. The answer is not withheld from you as a punishment. It is lovingly withheld for you until your trust is complete and you are fully prepared to steward the miracle. This is your greatest hope. You are waiting for a date on the calendar, but heaven is waiting for the posture of your soul. The moment your heart finally rests in his perfect will, your time of waiting has reached its divine conclusion. Your final act of faith is not a fierce prayer of demand. It is a quiet, surrendered amen. Your will be done, your timing is perfect, and your goodness is my certainty. The miracle is not far off. It is simply waiting for that final, beautiful, decisive moment when your entire being declares, "I trust you fully." Look back across the years of Abraham. His life was not a smooth ascent, but a relentless series of descents into despair, desert walks in uncertainty, and long, quiet waits in the tense shadow. He walked for decades with a magnificent promise draped over the backdrop of his barren reality. He had the promise, but he had to navigate the pain of the process. He had the vision, but he had to contend with the tyranny of time. And yet, the God who called him never failed him. The fire of the desert did not consume him. The mistakes did not disqualify him. The long wait did not render the promise null. Understand this profound, comforting truth. The God of the delay is the same God of the deliverance. He does not change. The very fire that tested Abraham's faith on the lonely plains of Canaan is the fire that is purifying your motives and forging your character right now. The silence that preceded Isaac's birth is the stillness in which your own miracle is being conceived and perfectly formed. Your delay is not a mark of your rejection. It is the irrefutable evidence of the magnitude of your destiny. You would not be enduring this much preparation if the promise were small. The greater the calling, the deeper the roots must go. And deep roots require slow seasons, quiet patience, and the necessary inconvenience of the wait. Therefore, do not despise your time in the tent. That solitary space of waiting, where the wind whips the canvas and the shadows grow long, is where your conversation with God is most intimate. It is where you learn to hear his voice, stripped of all fanfare and distraction. Do not grow weary of watching the stars. They are not merely cold, distant lights. They are luminous, eternal counters, reminders that the promise made to you is too vast for human reckoning, too grand to fit neatly into your impatient schedule. The stars remind you that the promise is a cosmic reality. The years of waiting have built a wisdom in you that instant winning could never have produced. The detours and trials have led you to a radical dependence that you never would have found on the straight, easy path. You have become a seasoned steward. You are now ready. If you are waiting, know this: you are not forgotten. You are seen, you are known, and you are dearly loved. The promise is not lost. It is ripening. It is moving from the eternal, heavenly blueprint into your tangible, earthly reality. You have walked with the patriarch through his trials. You have seen the lessons of the sand, the firelight, and the altar, and your faith is now finally ready for the weight and glory of the blessing. Hold fast to the vision. The darkness you feel is merely the necessary compression before the explosion of light. When the appointed hour arrives, when your heart is fully settled in his goodness, What once felt agonizingly delayed will appear perfectly. Breathtakingly divine, keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing. For your Isaac will come. The laughter of God will fill your tent. If this message has given you courage, if it has illuminated your path for another day in the wait, I invite you to share this message. Let the light of Abraham's journey be a beacon for someone else who is still waiting for their blessing. Let them know they are not alone. If you desire to continue strengthening your faith with these biblical narratives, if you long for more poetic truths to anchor your soul in God's perfect timing, then join us. I invite you now to subscribe to this channel. Let the light of this hope be a regular feature in your life. Hit the subscribe button below and activate the notification bell so that the next time God sends a word of encouragement and vision, you do not miss it. Let us keep looking to the stars together,